Hello and welcome to the very first BlueHornet webinar of the year, Leveraging the Right Data to Get Big Results. I'm Ashley Deese, the Digital Marketing Manager at BlueHornet, and I'm joined today by Kara Trivunovic, our VP of Strategic Services, Dan Cronin, Director of Consumer Marketing at our BlueHornet client, TheLadders, and Jordan Cohen, the VP of Marketing at Movable Ink. Before we get started, I want you to know the webinar is being recorded, and we'll send the recording and the slide out to all of you within the next couple of days. And we will be hosting a live Q&A after the event. So if you have any questions during the webinar, go ahead and put them into the Q&A console on your screen, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. So with that, I will turn it over to Kara to do the formal introductions.
Great. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. As Ashley said, my name is Kara Trivunovic, and I'm the VP of Strategic Services here at BlueHornet. I've been fortunate enough to be in this space for somewhere in the area of about 15 years, and during that time I've had the opportunity to work with great clients and brands, very much like Dan and TheLadders. As we look at our approach to working with our clients and partnering with our clients, our goal is to really work with customers to help them achieve their optimal performance within the email channel. So like I said, today I'm joined by such a client, Dan Cronin from TheLadders, as well as Jordan Cohen, who is a fixture in the email space for many years now with Movable Ink. Really quickly, before we jump into kind of the panel style questions that we're going to get into today, I'd like to hand it over to Dan and Jordan to do quick intros of yourselves and just to say thank you both for taking the time out of your day to join us for this conversation. So Dan, awesome. Can you introduce the group real quick?
So my name is Dan Cronin. I'm formerly Director of Consumer Marketing. Now we're calling, I had a title change. It's actually Director of Growth here at TheLadders. So I'm specifically tasked with not just growing the top line traffic and revenue that our site takes in, but also funnel and optimization and conversion analysis, and then all the way through the life cycle to engagement and bringing all of our users back to the site day in, day out, and we do that primarily through email, and that's our main touch point. So we're looking at using kind of not increasing the size of our recipient list necessarily or sending them more email, but we want to send them the right email at the right time. So I think it's an apt name for this webinar that we're not looking at big data necessarily, not to be contrarian about it and say whatever the hot issue is in the market, we're not going to do that. But truly, we're not looking at big data. We're looking at kind of the correct data and how to leverage that in our CRM.
Great. And Jordan?
Hey, well, first of all, thanks so much for inviting me to be here, Kara. Appreciate it and look forward to speaking to everybody today. Jordan Cohen, VP of Marketing for Movable Ink. I've been in the email industry for about 10 years now and have known Kara for most of that time. Joined Movable Ink about 2 years ago. We're a startup based in New York City that has invented a technology that plugs really neatly into a platform like BlueHornet. It enables me to hope that's not my phone. We enable marketers to bad audio. Sorry, guys. We enable marketers to change the content of messages in real time based on the time when they open it, their location when they open it, what device they're using. I'll be contrarian and join Dan there as well and say that I think that we're less focused on big data in the cloud and more focused on the right data here on Earth. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Kara.
Great. Well, thank you guys. And it sounds like we're having a little bit of audio issue. I think a few people were saying down there were having a hard time hearing you. So I don't know if it's the line or if we just need you to talk much louder. But I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us today. And we can go ahead and get started pending everybody can hear us all right. So as both Dan and Jordan alluded to, today we're talking about data, but it's not the proverbial big data. It really is talking about the right data. And so for email marketers, getting your hands on data isn't necessarily difficult in theory, right? Inside your organizations, you probably have all kinds of data in all kinds of systems and silos typically, which does make it a little hard empowered to get your hands on for use in driving your programs. But as you look at, the volume of data out there and the volume of data that's available today, it's estimated somewhere in the area of 90% of all of the data that is available today was generated in the last 2 years, and that's going to continue to grow by 50% a year for the next few years. But, with all of that data at hand, it's really not about the data that you have available, it's the data that you need. And so over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to pick the brains of these guys, both practitioners and industry experts, to see how they're handling data and using the right data to realize success with their programs. And so we're going to cover off on 4 types of data. We're going to look at demographic and psychographic data, email engagement data, brand engagement, and then device engagement. Then we're going to finish up with a couple quick stories of success and a cautionary tale, so that everybody can kind of walk away with a fundamental understanding of not only how in theory data can be applied, but how in reality it really is happening and being leveraged. So we're going to start with, like I said, subscriber data, or the demographic and psychographic information that's available to customers. And the reality is you probably know a lot about your customers, but you really don't necessarily need to use all of it to really drive your communications in a relevant way. So I'm going to kind of open this up and start with Dan. Dan, can you share with the group what are some of the main demographic and psychographic data points that are really kind of unique for your business, and how are you guys leveraging that today in your programs?
Sure. Just to give a brief overview for anyone who doesn't know TheLadders, we're a 10-year-old, formerly kind of just job board, but now we like to call ourselves a job matching site. So we're trying to match the right job seeker to the right job and provide those people with relevant information that will help them acquire that job, and to really give purpose and direction to their job search. So because that's our mission, to provide relevant information, not just a listing of jobs. We want to provide insight into what's happening in the job search and what you should be doing. We need to collect certain data that other job companies won't be collecting. So for us specifically, email is a big touch point with our customers. They want to be notified if new jobs are posted that match their profile. And so we have to collect different bars of information to provide them with relevant emails and relevant jobs within those emails. So we collect everything from salary level, what your current title is, to what your target title, what you want to be moving into. And then there's some implied stuff as well. We're not asking where do you live, but we certainly will parse some of your information to understand what your zip code is, what jobs are around you as far as your DMA that you're into, how far you're willing to travel. So we can kind of put guardrails on delivering you the right jobs at the right time. So those are some pieces of information that we collect, and we're looking to do more with the current information versus kind of going out and asking for incremental data points. We really want to we think that there's a lot more gold in those hills as far as the data that we're currently collecting.
Very good. So as you look at the data you are collecting, that's a pretty interesting point, or something I think that's worth diving into is what is it that you're gleaming about your customer versus additional data points that you're asking for. When you look at the data that you're collecting about them at the upfront, is there additional information about the demographic and psychographic behavior of your customer that you're able to glean from how they're interacting with job postings or other opportunities that you're leveraging, or is it really more the self-reported aspect of it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. There's hyper and uber complicated models that some sites, retailers like Target. I think if everyone's heard the story of Target can figure out you're pregnant basically by your purchase
before behavior. Yeah.
Right. So it's a famous story. People should look it up. It was all based on purchase behavior. But specifically for us, there's behavioral things that people are doing. So we know how many jobs you're applying to, for example. So we can kind of make assumptions about what you're doing and what stage you're in. So we'll put you into we'll segment and put you into different buckets. Like these are active job seekers. These are passive job seekers. These are people that are not interacting with our site at all anymore. So we can kind of deliver the right message at the right time to those people. But even in addition to that, I mean, there's a little bit of data science stuff that we do. If you're signing up, we try and guess a few things about you. So we've determined that people kind of screw up putting in their areas of expertise. They over-select things because they want to cover a wider kind of swath of jobs, but what they don't understand is that really takes away the targeting of the job. So they're receiving a lot of crappy job suggestions basically. So we took that out of the cycle, and we've gleaned that user behavior and said okay, when they are selecting this industry and this target title, these are probably their areas of expertise. So we took that friction point out of it.
Gotcha. Okay, great. So Jordan, I know that Geo does create a pretty compelling opportunity to serve real-time content, which is something that Movable Ink focuses on, pretty readily. I mean, can you share with us, how some of your customers are doing that and leveraging Geo in a really meaningful way?
Yeah, no, sure. And I'm gonna take this several levels down from what Dan was describing there. In terms of the sophistication of his program. I mean, Geo is just some really low-hanging fruit. So what we're able to do is, identify, I mean, you might have a user's zip code on file that might be 10 years old. The person has moved, and guess what? The first person that they told about their move wasn't you as a retailer. Maybe it was their bank, their banks if they're lucky enough. What we're able to do now is identify through IP location where you are at the precise moment that you open an email and serve you a relevant message based on that. So an example would be American Eagle Outfitters, right? Often a call to action in their email is, redeem this 10% off online or in store. Instead of just having a button in their email that says store locator, which then forces the user to click to open a website and then enter their current location and then press submit again, they're able to just push a map and actually the street address of your closest American Eagles Outfitters location at the moment that you open it. Really relevant. I live in New York City. A lot of people over here commute in from Westchester or Long Island or New Jersey. And if you were just relying on zip, you might send me a store location that is in my home as opposed to where I am when I'm most likely to shop. So that's a really easy basic example where you're just getting a better shot at driving foot traffic. Another thing you could do with Geo is target offers and content a little bit differently based on where somebody lives. So it's not necessarily about driving foot traffic, but for example, if you're a big retailer and you're sending an offer to me here in New York where it's a balmy 16 degrees today, you might want to show me a picture of shorts and a T-shirt relative to Kara, who's in Indiana right now, where it's what is it, 16 below?
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
Yeah. So we're in Miami, where I'm practically living. Send me a different image, different offer, and send Kara the down jacket and scarf. So that's kind of what we're seeing with Geo.
So let me ask you a question, because I mean, so the idea of geo-targeting, right, isn't necessarily a new idea, right? I mean, there's been travel and hospitality brands that have been doing it for years around airport code preference and things like that. But in talking with a lot of marketers, the assumption is that it's really difficult to do. I mean, how complicated is it to implement a program like that as you look at Geo? And I guess I'd ask from both sides, because I know, Jordan, you guys actually have a tool that helps facilitate it. But then Dan, as you guys look at Geo as well, I mean, how complicated has it been for both of you guys to really go down the path of implementing a program leveraging that as a data point? Dan, I guess maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, for our business, we found that it's essential. So there's really no use in collecting an email without Geo for us. People aren't looking for like a job; they're looking for a specific job or the job that's around them. Some people have a higher tolerance for travel than others. Some people want to work virtually or remotely, but without kind of that information that's self-selected, whether they care or not, but we have to know that information before we can start delivering jobs to them or filtering, sorting jobs for them on site, because there's just too much stuff out there. So it's an essential piece of information for us. That said, that doesn't mean that we always have to collect it in the same place. We have lots of acquisition channels. We have lots of engagement channels. So there's the idea of collecting it up front. Then there's the idea of getting somebody in with a low bar registration and then collecting it somewhere down the line. So the progressive profiling and collecting everything from geo to cell phone number is something that we're always kind of testing where it belongs in our flow. But for our business, it's an essential instrumental piece of information.
Great. Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really super simple. I mean, it's all just because of advances in technology. I think that kind of the real-time IP-based location enables marketers to do is not have to worry about segmenting by geo before they hit send, which could be very, very time-consuming, especially if you get more detailed. So by that I mean, if you start segmenting, it's virtually impossible to do it based on radius, right? You might be able to do it based on state. You could get into city, but if you want to do something like say, hey, I want to target people within 25 miles or 50 miles of a certain location, you could do that now.
Very
so that
good.
answers the question. But it is really simple. Everything really works through embedding an HTML code into your email that is basically saying, hey, relay back to me where this person is, and through a rule, then within milliseconds return the image that maps to where that person is when they open the message.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, like I said, more than anything, it's one of those, topically, right, we talk about it a lot of these things, right, applying data to be more relevant. But I think a lot of brands and marketers already feel like, I've got enough to do already, could be complicated to implement. And I just wanted to make sure that we were able to share with the group that, it's not overcomable. It's actually can be a relatively easy thing to make happen, especially, Dan, to your point, where it's very, very relevant to what it is you're doing and what you're trying to convey, and really making that a reality. All right, so let's move on to the idea of email engagement metrics. So, I've spent a lot of time with marketers who have, they're like, well, we have all this data inside of our organization, but I don't have any way to get my hands on it. And so we just batch and blast, and we don't do a whole lot of targeting. And the reality is if you're hitting the send button out of an email environment somewhere, anywhere, you have more information than you think. And really being able to leverage those the metrics that you can glean out of email engagement. Are people opening? Are people clicking? How long do they engage? How long do they stay engaged? Right? There are a number of things that you can look at. And really being able to boil it down to what's important, is critical again in making sure you fine tune kind of the directionality of the plan or the email communication you're looking at setting forth. So I'm going to start with a broad question to the both of you. Is open behavior in your email communication enough to make the assumption of interest in content, or the offers that you're putting out there? Because the ISPs clearly seem to think so by way of their engagement metrics. But I mean, is it enough to tell you something about your customer? And maybe Jordan, we can start with you, and then Dan, you can answer as well.
Sure. I mean, you're doing something right if you're provoking repeat opens. The only thing I temper it with is, there's a lot of rancor around the accuracy of open rate metrics, right? Over-reporting of certain mail clients that by default will fetch the image relative to others like Android or Gmail for Android that I guess until recently. Was suppressing those images. So it could be an indicator of engagement. Click behavior obviously gives you a deeper measure. But I think that if you control for understanding that there might be differences across different email clients, you could get a better view. Dan, what's your take?
Yeah, we use open rate to determine some of our send rules and some of our on-site presentations. So what we're going to show to recruiters and employers that are looking for job seekers, we want to show kind of engaged job seekers, and we use open as a proxy for an engagement level. And so we'll continue to show those job seekers and candidates to employers if they're still opening emails. We can also use it as a proxy for relevance as well. So are we sending the right jobs? It's important to know that you open the email, but if that's all you did, maybe we're not sending you the right job to click on. So we need to understand, yes, did you open the email, but also, did we the job that you clicked on is almost it's almost on the same level of importance as the job that you didn't click on. What did we do right and what did we do wrong? So we definitely look at open rates as kind of a behavioral signal and kind of our searchability algorithm on site.
I think that's an important, kind of a point to make too, is that, like you said, did they click or did they not? The lack of an action can actually be very telling as well. So, looking at click behavior, both as click activity and non-activity, can, like you said, tell you a lot about your customer. I think that's great. So Dan, to dive a little deeper into really looking at engagement metrics here for your program, how if you start talking about time of engagement, right, or length of time on a file or things like that, how might the Ladders treat like a new subscriber or a new job hunter differently than maybe someone who's been engaged for several months?
Yeah, in our case, we have not everyone's looking for a job all the time, and we realize that. It'd be nice if people were constantly looking for a job, but that's just not how it works. On average,
good for you, probably not for them, right?
Right, yeah. Actually, I just heard someone on my team told me that, and it was the CEO of an energy company. She said the best advice she ever got was every year do a job search. So, to always make sure that you're self-aware of what your skills are and like how marketable is that, and are you keeping up with the industry? So it can be kind of a self-awareness moment every year.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. All that said, the job search on average happens about less than 2 years. So, there's like an 18 to 24 month kind of like latency in job searching. So you start a new job, and then on average you'll start looking for another one within 2 years. That doesn't mean you're going to take one, but if you look for one, then you can certainly upgrade to a premium subscription on the Ladders and use our service. But for us, there's new job seekers, and there's people that we know were searching for a job 18 months ago. So they're both kind of valid to be new. So we can reach back out to those people and ask them, they've been on file for possibly years. We'll go back to them every 18 months and kind of start another, are you happy at your job? Are you going to start to look for another one, and maybe wake them up? And then people that have only been on file for a few days, new members of the Ladders that are completely incremental registrations, we have to treat them a bit differently too, because they might be getting into their job search, and the funnel might be a little wider for them. So we're helping to we're trying to pull more information out of them so they can start heading in the right direction. So we have to be asking a bit more from them to qualify them on site.
Gotcha. So Jordan, as you're, as you see, the brands that you're working with, do you see them, or how do you see them using email engagement metrics, maybe to stem attrition or increase engagement, or any kind of crash and burn stories too?
Yeah, no. So I think that the poster child of kind of time to engagement, or doing time to engagement right, is TripAdvisor. So I was talking about Dan with this, and coincidentally, Dan actually worked at TripAdvisor in a prior life.
It's a small incestuous industry, right, Jordan?
Yeah. Even on the brand side, apparently.
Yep.
But I'm not sure if Dan gets credit for this, but and not sure how many other folks on the line can say this, but I've been a TripAdvisor member for probably 8-10 years now. Have been on their email list for that length of time. Use the service, whenever I'm about to book a trip. Right? They are fantastic at leaving me alone when I'm not in market, right? And then picking up the cadence when we are. So this kind of overlaps with another slide that I know we're about to get to with non-email metrics, but really, as soon as you hit TripAdvisor's site, look up a specific hotel or location during specific dates, that's when they're going to start activating messaging to you that's highly targeted, and trying to get you to book that reservation for those specified dates. If you don't book through them, and the dates that you were looking at have passed, they just stop messaging to you. And it's great because you never opt out, and you're willing to come back, and they're very sensitive to that. So I know that there's a lot of, kind of pressure to mail more constantly. But for certain types of businesses, like TripAdvisor, like TheLadders, a less is more strategy, and focusing on delivering the information you're actually going to find valuable bears fruit in the form of reducing attrition, and having a chance to take a bite out of the apple, for a decade, 2 decades, however long your customer lifespan might be. So I think they're the crown jewel of understanding time to engagement, except for maybe what Dan's doing now if he's upped it at TheLadders.
Very good, and I think that's a great kind of segue too into the idea of brand engagement, right? Which, as a general statement can be a little elusive, right? Really trying to measure brand and brand engagement can be a little difficult, especially if you're, a multi-channel retailer, with brick and mortar locations, et cetera. But, as we're kind of looking at it in this context, we're really looking at, engagement with the brand outside of email, as a channel. And Jordan, I think one of the things that you kind of talked about was, this idea of leveraging site engagement, right? So you've come to the site and it triggers, your ability to now start sending email again. Another brand that I see do that a lot is One Kings Lane, and I'm into house shopping for stuff, stuff for the house, and a lot of times they'll do the same thing where if you've been vacant from their site or their app for a period of time, they minimize the email communication. But once you're back on the site or you're engaging with them in their app, they start to send you email again. So I think that's really kind of a great segue into what we're trying to talk about, here as we look at how brands can leverage other engagement moments to drive or influence their email communication. So site visits, conversion, then in some cases offline engagement where that's a reality. So I would imagine, Dan, that you guys may see a pretty dramatic correlation between site behavior and the window of opportunity to convert a prospective customer or match someone with an employee or an employer at a really opportune moment in time. Can you share with us a little bit how that kind of factors into what you guys are doing with your email program?
Yeah. So, I'll go into it in a little bit. We have a slide later on. It's just about kind of TheLadders and how we're using the term CRM a bit more holistically. So it's not just email for us. One of the most important timeliness is the idea of being able to give somebody the perfect job right when they should get it. So we did some analysis and found out that from the recruiter and employer side that they consider applicants at a much higher rate. So they look at profiles and people within the first 72 hours of posting a job. So you basically have 3 days to apply for a job before the recruiter and employer will kind of statistically stop looking at you as a candidate. They get a wide enough pool within the first 3 days. So that means that we have to show you as a qualified job seeker that job within the first 3 days. So how do we identify that? How do we identify you, and how do we identify the fit between you, so that kind of A to B point, and then deliver that to you in a timely manner. Sometimes it's through email that we'll send kind of the idea of a hiring alert. Hey, this job just got posted in your geo that you said that you want to work in, and then we deliver that to you hopefully that same day. Another thing that we're looking into is using push notifications on our mobile. So if you say that you want to be notified right away if a job matches to your skill level so you can apply to it right away, then we're going to let you do that on the mobile phone. The application is still not something that we want to push to job seekers on their mobile, but we are going to give you kind of a light, low weight object to pass along to a recruiter. So we have likes on our mobile device, which is the same thing as a poke or a wink or something like that. So you're just passing along intent to the recruiter, and that's all happening kind of like seamlessly on a mobile device. So we're trying to find ways of delivering, the highest value like merchandise, and for us, that's like a really great job. So we get jazzed about, finding something great and then being able to send it to you right away, because we know that tightens our ecosystem when the right person applies to the right job at the right time.
Great. And I think, because I want to make sure that we have enough time to get to the stories or the successes that you guys have seen. So I want to move through, and you kind of brought this up again too, is device engagement. So, looking at app usage, looking at device type, and how your brand is leveraging that. I know you have a lot of experience in analyzing mobile trends. In a little more detail, how does that device type or that app usage actually play a role in influencing your email program?
Yeah, for us, I think that the mantra that we've been saying for a while is we're mobile first and web second. That doesn't mean that we're deprecating the desktop, but it does mean that everything that we develop, CRM and email more specifically, they all have to be at least responsibly designed, if not kind of designed specifically to be opened up on a single kind of mobile device. So iOS and Android might even look different in the future for us. And if you are opening up an email on a mobile device, we don't want to push you to the desktop experience. So I've heard some people say that it's not their favorite thing when they navigate to a site and then they hit a splash page that tries to get them to download. But for us, we really feel strongly that you're not going to interact with our site or maybe even enjoy our site from a mobile web search experience. So we're going to try and aggressively push you into the app, downloading the app, and then every single job that you click on in an email will try and open up that job in the application, because it's just a seamless experience for us. And we know that people interact with the app more, so it's just kind of identifying the context of the email open and then pushing somebody into the best experience.
Okay, good. So Jordan, as you look at, kind of this idea of device type and engagement and app usage, how are brands using Movable Ink to kind of, to bring these together, in a cohesive way?
Yeah, this is the biggest sea change that the industry has experienced, ever really. So Movable Ink, looking across our entire client base, for the past 3 quarters, we've been issuing device preference reports and really studying, which devices are consumers using to open and interact with all of your email. Q4 of last year, that number grew from 61% to 65%. Of emails being opened on smartphones and tablets. So nearly 2/3 of email opens are already taking place in an environment where the preferable next click, or actually, better said, next tap, is going to be to take you to a mobile app as opposed to the mobile web. What Dan is talking about with the splash page, I think is a good kind of stopgap, but we're already able to deep link and avoid all of that. So by that I mean, the capability exists today to identify in real time when the consumer is opening your email on an iPhone, on an Android device, or on a tablet, change the creative in response to that. So we're seeing a lot of customers really take advantage of this in their welcome message. So the first time that you sign up for Seamless, the food delivery company, for their email newsletters, if you open that message on an iPhone, it'll say not just download the app, but download the iPhone app. Likewise for Android. Then if you click on that button, instead of the old way of doing it, which would take you to, it would launch a Safari browser, force you to self-identify what device you're using, click again, and then either go to the iTunes Store or to Google Play. Now we're able to immediately launch the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store based on what device you're actually using, eliminating those extra taps, right? Then taking it a step further, if the consumer has already downloaded your app, has you on their home screen, what we could do now is immediately link to the right place. So if Dan opens his email from Seamless on his desktop using Gmail, wants to get that 10% off, it'll launch Seamless in Safari. But that very same email, if he opens it on his iPhone, will launch his Seamless app, the mobile app that's installed in his home screen, and even take him to a specific page if there's a specific offer that was specified. And I think that what we're hearing from Dan is that that is a preferable experience. You want to drive people into the mobile app, and at the end of the day, the reason is because it will require fewer clicks, fewer taps, really enable the consumer to do what they want to do and what you want them to do with as little friction as possible. The last benefit is if you're launching a mobile app, you don't have to force the consumer to log in again. You will have their preferences installed. You might have their credit card and file in the app, which you would force them, on a website to input again. So I think that we're starting to see marketers really take that mobile-first approach, or at least mobile-cognizant approach, which is critical in light of the numbers that I just shared. And moreover, starting to understand that next-click optimization doesn't always mean the web, and trying to figure out how do we route people into different experiences based on what devices they're using, what email clients, et cetera.
Great, thank you. And I think it's interesting too, as we kind of we've shared now some open Q&A and some real kind of interactive conversation around some really sophisticated things that the Ladders and Jordan, some of the brands you guys are working with, are doing with their email programs. And what I find so fascinating about it is that all of those things were powered by 11 data points, right? And this is where the whole idea of big data versus right data becomes really critical, because you can do some really amazing things if you just focus on a couple key critical data points. So I want to thank you guys for kind of sharing to date to this point some of what you guys are doing there. And now I'd want to take all of that into consideration, and I wanted to really kind of give each of you guys the opportunity to share what has been your success story as you look at leveraging the right data. So Dan, we can start with you and kind of share the story that you had of the story of success leveraging just a couple key data points for your program.
Yeah, thanks, Kara. So for us, like I said before, our company mantra now when we're thinking about development and growth is really mobile first and web second. So for us, I mean, given that our biggest engagement and re-engagement channel is email, we really had to build, when we were thinking about development of our mobile app, we really had to think about how we were going to build that into our email. And so for us, it was really about kind of understanding, both for the email piece and the development of the app, the context of your situation. I mean, you have your mobile phone in your breast pocket if you're a guy wearing a jacket, or in your jeans pocket. You're carrying it around with you all the time. It's very close to you. Why would you even need to open up our app on a mobile phone? It's probably because you want to be discreet about your job search, and you want to be doing it kind of during the day. You don't want to wait until you get home and work on your laptop or your desktop computer at home. So we really had to think about the context of what we were asking you to do and what we're going to be delivering to you. So based on that, it was we kind of grew our mobile email in such a way that if we knew that you were going to be at work, the CTA may be download our app at work. But we also found out that if we were going to be asking you to download the app, you might not even do that at work. You're probably going to be opening up that email on a desktop computer in Outlook or whatever your company's email client is. So we started testing sending out the email later on at night and found that we had much higher open and action rates. So if we were to deliver an email that had a mobile download CTA in it, it was better served at 8 or 9 p.m. versus at noon or 9 a.m. So that was learning for us, and that's helped us kind of like test into a segmentation and then kind of iterate on that and grow. So if we can identify you as somebody who hasn't downloaded our mobile app, then we can kind of bubble up that CTA and then maybe push that email out to a later time in the day to increase action and take rates. So that's our idea, is that as we're doing something, we really want to come up with the idea of when you're going to be interacting with our site and then building around that context.
Great. All right, Jordan, I know you've got a success story here, something you guys have done with the finish line. Or you could not take yourself off mute.
Oh, it's like that YouTube video about the conference calls in real life that just happened. Sorry, everybody. I was just saying, so the Finish Line is a leading retailer of sports merchandise. They have a website, but also have stores across the nation. And there are a couple of big events that take place every year. The Super Bowl coming up this Sunday. In this particular story, we want to talk about March Madness last year. But there are these big events that they're really banking on, all of their channels, including email, to drive extraordinary traffic compared to the rest of the year. So with March Madness, it's a unique situation. You don't really know which teams are going to be in the Final Four, and once you do know, you only have a week to market to your audience until the Final Four takes place. So in 2011, what Finish Line did around the Final Four is they had really a batch and blast type of message, just one size fits all. As soon as they knew who the Final Four teams were, they showed their jerseys and their sneakers and the logos, and they sent that to everybody on their list across the country. Under tight time constraints, you have to produce the creative, you have to get the list together, you got to press the send button. This was really the best they could do to try to get that campaign out Sunday night or Monday morning after the Final Four was decided. But the email marketing manager over there, wasn't really happy with that. He said, I want to get a little bit more segmented. I don't like this one size fits all. And, the initial idea would be, hey, if somebody's in Michigan, let's send them the Michigan gear. If somebody's in Kansas, let's send them the Wichita State gear. But he came across this interesting data, Facebook fan data actually, that revealed, and I'm actually not sure we're going to have the build here, but what you're seeing here is that there's a correlation not just related to being in the state of a school when it comes to you being a fan, but actually people who live within a 100-mile radius of a school are more likely to be fans of that university. Oh no, so sorry, I didn't have my build there. So by that, we're saying that, so for Michigan in particular, an example would be not only are in-state fans of the University of Michigan Ann Arbor, but also people who live in northern Ohio, in towns like Toledo, are actually more likely to be Wolverine fans than they are Ohio State Buckeye fans. So using this and using real-time technology, what they did over there was, I'm sorry, Kara, I'm missing the build over here. Okay, here we go.
There you go.
Yes, what they were able to do was they set up different creatives and just set rules in the system. And it would have been impossible to do it just using pre-sent segmentation to come up with not just state, but that 100-mile radius of a specific campus. So what they're able to do is say, if the consumer or the recipient of my email opens it when they're in Michigan or within a 100-mile radius of Ann Arbor, let's show a Michigan-only or Michigan-specific email. Same thing for Wichita State. If in Kansas, 100 miles of the school, let's show them that gear. Same for Syracuse, and on and on and on. If you fell out of range of those territories, you receive that generic message, all 4 schools. And year over year, as a result of just being just a little bit more targeted, right? In a very easy way, in a turnkey way that didn't require a whole lot of work, they were able to generate an 80% lift in click-through rates compared to the year prior. So again, this isn't really big data. It just is the right data that was able to drive a significant lift in click-through rates and ROI.
Great. Thank you, guys. I think, with every great story, there's also, a missed opportunity. And so, there's countless numbers of these stories out there. But, the one thing about data is that, depending on who is making, the judgment call or actually conducting the analysis of that data, everybody brings some sense of personal assumption into, what they're looking at. And so, as you look at, what you can do and what you should do, being two very different things. Dan alluded to it earlier. Target, went through an entire big data process, and they were able to get to a point where I think they told a father that his teenage daughter was pregnant before he knew. Scary, right? And so just because you can doesn't mean you should. And avoiding sensitive topics. So clearly, pregnancy of a teenage daughter might be one of them. But other things like politics. I had a conversation with a client who, they based on some information in their database, they made an assumption whether you were a Democrat or a Republican, and then some of it was based on previous purchase behavior and other demographic and psychographic kind of markers. And when they sent out this communication that was very geared towards the Democrat versus the Republican, customers were up in arms. I mean, their call center went crazy. Customers were responding. A lot of people unsubscribed. They got a lot of really negative feedback in this space because they simply made an assumption about their political purview. And so it kind of talks to both, right? It's don't assume and avoid sensitive topics. I mean, politics, religion, pregnant children, all those things that we probably don't want to talk about in the email space. I've also worked with, there's also another story out there in the travel and hospitality space that a travel company went through the process of householding customers inside of their database, and there was a gentleman who had booked a romantic getaway, and as the trip was approaching, they had sent email to both he and his wife about the trip. Come to find out that it was not his wife he was taking on the trip, right? So there are huge misses here, right, in leveraging this assumptive data, and even if you are looking at the right data, you could be applying it in the wrong way. And a lot of what you need to do too is mistakes are going to happen. We're all human. We all make them, but you need to address them as well, and not just publicly with the customer and making that apology, but addressing them in your workflow process and determining how you're going to leverage the data and what role you're going to play in those assumptions as you kind of move forward. So like I said, I mean, there's a lot of great things that you've heard from Jordan and Dan, these great stories of how they've been able to either on their own or in conjunction with their clients do some really amazing things with just a couple key data points. But like I said, I mean, it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. So ask yourself, those questions as you start to, move through the application of those data points to your email programs. So I want to quickly thank both Dan and Jordan and all of you for joining us today. We have discussed a number of successful programs, and where using the right data was the key to success. And so as we open it up to the Q&A tab and kick it over to Ashley to ask some questions of these guys, I just want to leave you with kind of these key 11 data points for you to consider for your programs in 2014. So Ashley, I'll hand it over to you for Q&A.
Thanks, Kara. So we have a few questions came in. The first one is for all of you. Do the geo-targeted emails have a higher click-through rate than non-geo-targeted?
So for us, we have a few different kind of essentially all of our non-newsletter emails are geo-targeted because they have to be around you. So I would say that yes, definitely. It's not really, the correlation is not causation there because geo-targeted emails are essentially about jobs, and then we can send you some non-geo-targeted stuff, which is kind of advice and content and things like that don't have to do specifically with your DMA. So it's kind of an apples to orange comparison for us. I'm not sure about you, Jordan.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the case today that I just walked through, as I mentioned, there was an actual 80% lift in click-through rate when a retailer geo-targeted the message in a very basic way relative to sending a kind of one-size-fits-all. I think geo, it's a use case by use case example. Certainly in your case, Dan, geo is everything. You don't want to be sending jobs in California if somebody's in New York, of course. For the retailer, it made a lot of sense to send Michigan gear to people who live in Michigan. For other companies, a cup of coffee is the same whether you're in Michigan or you're in California. But I think that if it's something so simple, it's something that you have access to, make the message that much more relevant. Yes, we see lifts in click-through rates, other key engagement metrics every single time.
I think that's key, to any of this, right, Jordan? Any of these data points may or may not be relevant to any given brand. And that's the important thing here is really vetting what are the data points that are going to be most relevant. And geo may or may not be, something that is extremely critical to your business. And so I think that's a great point. You have to make sure that the data point is relevant. But yes, where it is, we've seen, a significant lift in performance where it's been very relevant from a geo perspective.
The next question is for Jordan regarding the finish line example that you gave. How did you get the data points from Facebook and the fans preferred? The Facebook fans preferred sports teams? Was that finish lines page, or how did you go about getting the information?
So to be clear, I didn't. It was my smart client who did. And the way he accessed it was actually just luck. He reads Deadspin, and they published a story showing the Facebook fan data. So Facebook, their PR team pushed that out, showing geographic differences. I think they've done it for NFL teams as well, and for the Super Bowl. They're able to, looking at chatter across the billion-plus people who are on Facebook, they're able to figure out which, again, not even states, but even zip codes are leaning towards one team or another. So he just came across that article, and that's what gave him the idea. When I don't have fan preference data on file, I'm not just going to target by state. I'm going to take it a step further, and using these learnings, I'm going to target those specific areas that are more likely to be a fan of Team A or Team B. So sometimes just reading articles could give you big ideas too. That's another data point. Reading is fundamental.
All right. We have one more question. It's for everybody. Do you believe send time optimization is relevant in today's email climate, especially with the mobile first mantra being spoken of so often?
Sorry, Kara, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, fine. For us, we've definitely seen that's true. We've kind of, for the years, seen that there's an optimal time to deliver messages in the morning for East Coast and West Coast. So we make sure that we have emails in inboxes at about 9 a.m. on sides, and we're kind of like segmenting those sends. But also, by email type. So if we're delivering something that's supposed to be opened up on a mobile device, then we'll send that later in the day. So you're more likely to be opening up that email on your phone when you get home from work versus on your desktop when you're at work. So we've seen that kind of playing around with send times by email type has dramatically increased opens and clicks.
Yeah, I was just going to say too. I think there's still a behavioral element associated with when people engage with brands, and so looking at, not everybody's email program is going to be impacted by send time optimization, but there is a very real reality of when people do engage, and and the hard part about it is that it's not really vertically focused, and it's not necessarily necessarily device focused either. It's very specific to an individual. And so, how I engage and when I, in this case, look for a job, versus when Jordan might be looking for a job or Dan, I mean, it's very different, right? Everybody's situations are very different. And so, send time optimization really does become more prevalent at an individual level than potentially at more of a vertical or a channel specific opportunity.
Yeah, this is Jordan. Agree with what you just said, Kara, tremendously. And I think that there are two approaches to send time optimization, or three actually. There's a hunch. Hey, I think Tuesday at 1 just seems to be doing better for me. There's option 2, which is looking at data in aggregate. Most of my audience seems to be most engaged on Tuesday at 1. Then there was kind of the big data approach, which was starting to look at the personal level and say, Kara, for whatever reason, seems to consistently be opening her emails right at this time on this day, and Dan looks a little bit different, and let's send to them at different times. So that was that big data approach. Let's look at tons of historical data to predict what you're most likely to do. The good news is, and so what we're advocating for is, forget send time optimization. Let's focus on open time optimization, because as good as prediction is, even if it's 99% accurate, there's always that one day that I think Kara's going to zig and she ends up zagging. Now we could be up to the second precise in showing you the relevant information when you open the message. Great example would be a ticket seller is trying to get you to buy tickets to the Billy Joel concert at MSG next month. By the time you open the message, when you actually open the message, that show is sold out. Now you could show the next available show, right, as opposed to disappointing the customer. So, I think that there's already kind of a next generation approach to timing your message the right way. And just the last piece I'll add is that I think that's even more relevant in an age where we have things like the Gmail tabs, where you really can't control, you can't assume that just because you sent the message at 1, it's going to be at the top of that consumer's inbox. They have more control than ever, more sorting tools than ever, and they might not see that message till hours from now, even days from now, if it's in a promotions tab.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Kara, Dan, and Jordan for joining us today. We're out of time, and thank you for everybody on the line. That concludes today's webinar, and we hope to see you next time.